candidate Joseph Venora, Democratic candidate Jeffrey Wells, Democratic candidate Dave Sanders, Charles Sanders, apologies, and we have a Republican candidate, Charles Sanders, Republican candidate Mike Domino, and Republican candidate John Reno. My apologies, Mr. Sanders. So the first question, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Funk. The first question will be, if you could suggest one improvement to the way the current Board of Trustees operates, what would that be?
Wow. I'd rather wait till I got there before I did that. Truth is, I'm really not sure.
Okay. Mr. Penor?
Thank you, Grant. I want to first say thanks to the Suffolk Times and thanks to Peconic Landing for hosting us tonight. The question, what would I suggest? I think the matter is an issue of communication. My first order of the day would be, let's communicate more frequently, let's communicate in a way people can understand. I think we're facing a turning point in the way we live, especially along the waterfront after Hurricane Sandy. And we have a lot of good scientific evidence. We have a lot of people working very hard. I think we fall down in the area of clear, regular, consistent, and most importantly, easy to understand education, communication, especially when it comes to living along the waterfront.
Mr. Wells?
Good evening. I think the first thing that the trustees really need to address is education, in the sense that the regular business that the trustees take to process permits, I don't think is enough. I think they need to be much more proactive in reaching out to the community and interfacing with universities and possibly instituting internship programs and other such things so that they outreach to the community more.
How you doing? I'm Charles. Hello. How you doing? I'm Charles Sanders. I think one of the things that we need to do, if you want a waterfront property, you need to say change your dock or fix your dock. I think it can be a little bit confusing at first for someone who comes to the building department, or comes to the trustees. You really don't know where to go in order to find out what permits you need, what process you need. What I'd really like to see happen is, and I'm a computer guy, I would like to see on the internet a flow chart, which basically say, if I want to have my dock replaced or my dock repaired, where do I go and what do I do? Step-by-step process. I think that would help a lot in communicating exactly what one would need to do to change their dock, work on their bulkheads, or anything of that nature. That's something that I would like to propose and do if I'm trustee. Thank you very much.
Mr. Domino?
I'm Trustee Mike Domino. To tell you the truth, when I first came on board, I had a wish list of things that I wanted to accomplish. One of them was, in fact, a flow chart to simplify the process for individuals. Another was to do a good deal more in stormwater management. Unfortunately, Superstorm Sandy came in and disrupted my plans. So we've been so busy since that storm that pretty much put the flow chart on the back burner. It's something I wish to accomplish, and if you so kind as to elect me again, it's something I would put on the forefront, as well as the stormwater management.
Good evening. My name is John Bredmeyer. I want to thank you for the ability to be here this evening. I think that many people don't really understand the total jurisdiction of the trustees, and maybe to reference that, trustees are the public trust landholders of approximately 2,000 acres of land in the town. And additionally, the trustees have been given the responsibilities by the town board and a close working relationship with any number of town boards to enforce and regulate the town code under the Coastal Erosion Hazard Act, which is the adoption of state law, as well as we have the town's wetlands ordinance, chapter 275. Just to give you an idea of the scope of the problem, since Tropical Storm Sandy, trustees performed over 800 field inspections. We issued 260 emergency and administrative permits, and we issued 340 permits as a result of public hearings. We personally walked over 6 miles of town destroyed property along our wetlands. So you have to understand that education is a great thing. I'm highly educated myself. I try to use the training I received at Cornell, and as a 35-year career employee in the county health department, all the things that I learned when I was doing science for the Peconic Estuary program. But you have to understand, predominantly, we're a regulatory board, and we don't have much time to do the education component. And as much as we can, we do. I chair the town's Shellfish Advisory Committee, and we have a lot of education going on there. We have citizens directly involved in water sampling our waters. Again, I want to thank you, and please talk to us. Back in the day, we used to have Suffolk Times coverage of our meetings. That would help a lot of communication, and that would be a real godsend for a community that needs to know more about its water quality and what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. What we'll do for the next question is we'll bring it back the other way. So we'll start with you this time, Mr. Breedemeyer. And the next question is a reader question. It's, does the current information on groundwater and surface water pollution make trustee decisions more difficult? Please explain how and why. And if I could just note real quick, just a couple of people in the audience have suggested just holding the microphone a little closer. So
A little closer?
Yeah, great, thanks.
I would say that the trustees are keenly aware of particularly groundwater and surface water conditions, and it's the standards that we impose through our regulatory program are not difficult. The permits for constructing near wetlands are including standard measures for controlling silt and runoff. Projects where they have an old sanitary system, we're requiring new sanitary systems to be moved upland. As a person who is very experienced in water quality issues, I try to provide additional information for fellow board members if I think there's a water quality issue that should be addressed. And I hate to say it's fairly formulaic. We go based on the science. We go based on what our sister regulatory agents suggest, and we all try to work together.
Basically, one second, what John said, I'm also a member of the Shellfish Advisory Committee. We're keenly aware.
Can't hear you.
Keenly aware of the impact of nitrates on an ecosystem. So we move this sanitary systems back, landward as often as we can, which so far has been 100% of the time. And we're monitoring the levels of nitrates in the creeks and bays. I do that constantly with Trustee Breedemeyer and also Trustee James King. So we try to stay on top of it. Actually, if you compare our creeks to creeks in towns west of us, we're in great shape. The trustees have been doing a good job in that area.
There's really not too much that I can add to what John and Mike said, except as a real estate broker, it's my ability to let the new homeowners and homeowners that are leaving understand a little bit about the process. With regard to the regulatory system and water, they summed it up, and there's really nothing else that I can add.
I think what we really need to do about groundwater and surface water is revisit the entire picture regarding our septic systems and sewering systems in the town of Southold. These 340,000 septic systems in Suffolk County alone, many of which are outdated. Some are mere cesspools going into drums in the middle of the ground, and the leaching into the aquifer is happening on a daily basis, along with all the nitrates and killing off the eel grass and our shellfish. So what we really need to do is do a survey. We need to plot out exactly what our options are with regarding sewering. We need to look at individual sewers. We need to look at cluster sewering. We have a cluster of homes sharing a system. Or we need to look at satellite systems where where clusters of homes share a single system. We even need to look at a centralized system. All of those things need to be looked at so that we get to a point where we are able to control what we're putting into our aquifers. This is a critical issue, and the quality of our water has gone down drastically, and it continues to go down. It's a very serious situation, threatening our fish life, our commercial fishing, our recreation. Everything we touch touches water. So the sooner we address this, and the more seriously we take it by reaching out to communities such as the Cape Cod waterfront plan, where they've done very innovative thinking. They put nitrate filters into smart sewering. This is what we need to look at, because just replacing another system because it's new is not enough. We need to be smart about how to control the nitrates and what we're putting into our drains.
That's time. Thanks.
I have to agree a lot with what Joff just said. I want to say that Southold Town probably is doing a better job than a lot of areas further west, but I also want to say I think little by little, I think we're losing the battle for clean water. I remember as a boy, I'd walk out into Peconic Bay, the water would be up to my waist, I could see my toes. That's not happening very much anymore. I think little by little, we're losing the battle against nitrate runoff. It's been proven time and time again that it's not so much the farmer that's polluting the water system, but it's the homeowner with stormwater runoff, irresponsible use of fertilizers. And I think there again, that issue needs to be better communicated. I think once people know, they will cooperate and they'll realize it's much better to have clean water than to have green grass. Thank you.
The question was, are these things interfering somehow with how the trustees work? And I'm not sure, again, not being a trustee at the moment, how that is. But I do know, as has been said, waters are in pretty bad shape. Eelgrass doesn't look like it's coming back. Where are our clam beds? Where are the oysters? Where are the fish? We're in trouble. Now, Southold cannot clean up the Sound or the Bay by itself, but we can help. And I don't see it getting any cleaner. Nitrates are a serious problem, probably the single worst problem, but it's not so much farm and lawn runoff. It's actually coming from our waste disposal. Our septic systems and cesspools, none of them are up to the modern technologies. And that's where the nitrates are coming from. They filter down and out under the beach, out into the Sound of the Bay. And I doubt we can go to every resident and say, upgrade the system for $10,000. That's not going to fly. But somewhere along the line, we have to come up with some kind of a plan, some kind of an action, and work with Connecticut, the rest of the island, the South Shore, and come up with an answer. We don't have one yet, but we've got to aim for an answer.
Reversing the order again, but starting this time with Mr. Fenora. 2 weeks ago, the Southold Town Democratic Committee purchased an advertisement in the Suffolk Times, claiming that some people want to take away Southolders' right to walk along beaches, local beaches, and questioning if the present town government has been doing enough to protect those rights. Each of the Democratic candidates' names was listed on the ad. Can you explain your position on this?
Are you saying we're responsible for that ad? Yeah, we'll take full responsibility for that ad. The reason that ad was produced was because in our process of trying to be elected, knocking on doors, standing outside the post office, and actually meeting people and listening to their concerns, that's something that came up time and time again. I think Paul Colombo's in the audience here. He supports our action on that. He supports our position on that because he himself won a case about walking on the beach. I understand there's two sides to every story. Someone commented when your paper last week reprinted our ad on the front page of your web edition. Someone commented who has Soundfront property in East Marion saying that they live on the Sound and they're troubled by people who come up and make campfires and make noise and leave litter. Yeah, everybody's against that. I think when that happens, you're supposed to call the police. But we've lived a long time with people on waterfront property. People have the right to traverse. I don't think we need any more laws on the books in this issue. What I think we need common sense. We need greater cooperation among neighbors. We have to understand the median high tide mark, this 19-year average that everyone keeps bringing up, is well and good. That's a standard set by the state. But we have to understand that the high tide mark is dynamic. It changes twice a day. You have a lunar and solar high tide mark. I think people need to be respectful of their neighbors' wishes. And I think with greater cooperation, we could all have this issue solved. I don't think we need more laws. I don't think we need a lot more debate on it. Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
Thank you. Yeah, my position on this is that we need to create a system where the community is involved in deciding where the rack line is, where they can walk, where they cannot walk. We should not have to rely on surveys that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially and will be out of date the day that they're published. What we can do by using modern technologies, such as Google Earth, for example, we can plot that, we can get everybody involved so that everybody has a basic understanding of the real world situation of what a particular beach, what those demarcations are. Certainly the property owner has a right to their property, as does the public have a right to walk on the beach. That demarcation is the high water mark, and that can be plotted very easily, very inexpensively, and very democratically through technologies where everybody gets involved.
Okay. How many people here, if you forgive me for asking this question, are on fixed income? I'm assuming quite a few people in this audience right now are on fixed income, correct? Right. It's hard enough to live out here on the North Fork with our school taxes, correct? But what I'm worried about is whenever we talk about surveys, whenever we talk about making a survey for the high water mark or making a survey for septic systems, who's going to pay for that survey? It's us. The question is our water that bad to the point where we actually need to have a survey for our septic system to determine if...
Yes.
Do you really think that?
Oh, absolutely.
Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that survey?
Costs less if we do it together.
We pay for things that we don't need now, that we need clean water.
I agree with you. My question is, you have to ask yourself, how clean is our water? And if our water is not clean, then a survey is warranted. But let me throw the scientific question over to John. But that's what I worry about, is I worry that we continue to add more cost to living out here on the North Fork. I live here on the North Fork. I drink the water here on the North Fork. I'm not scared of the water on the North Fork. That's my job as the trustee, to determine if those things are bad. And if they're bad, I'm going to be the first one to come in front of you and let you know that.
Please answer the question. You're avoiding the question. You're going way
Please,
left.
please,
and right
audience, let the candidate speak.
It's not appropriate.
I disagree.
Mr. Dunn.
Again, some people seem to be confused about what exactly it is that the trustee does. John alluded to before to the number of inspections that we did. And just to summarize, between November and June this year, we did something like 1,400 actions that included 800 field surveys.
Sorry, a little closer to the mic.
Nowhere in that time, and that is from the Superstorm standing up until June, doing 800 inspections, 1,400 actions. Did someone come up to us and complain or make an issue about access to the beach? I understand that there were 2 calls during this time, but in those cases, what happens is the Bay Constable goes out and he determines, because it's the practical way to do it, where the rack line is, using the second rack line most often, and that's the boundary. So community has decided where the boundary is, and it did so in 2 court cases, one in 2007 and again in 2011. And the boundary is at the Marine High Tide line. That process is a 19-year process, and you don't establish a physical survey. Even if one was decided that is a physical survey and monuments, it would be dynamic, it would change, and then the Bay Constable would still resort to what he does now, that is looking at the rack line. So all the trustees understood
That's not.
all the trustees understand the public trust doctrine.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for bringing up our Bay Constables. Southold Town, in its founding in 1676, when there were 10 trustees to preside over the town, had a constable. And I'm sure if you were running your cattle on commonage that you shouldn't have, or you're doing something that was not appropriate, you would call your constable. And he shows up unarmed, very polite, with a big smile on his face. Now, nowadays he might show up with a 9mm on his hip, but it's not for you. And the bottom line is, we have very competent constables and peace officers, and this is really an enforcement responsibility of the trustees. I think other people are also confusing the trustees with the town board, the Suffolk County Health Department, and the State Department of Environmental Conservation when they suggest we can regulate the specific elements in groundwater quality. I know this gets a little off track. I believe I'm going to yield the rest of my time, if possible, to Charles, since I think he may have misunderstood the previous question, this question.
Yeah, I apologize. You were correct, sir. I didn't answer that question. And I think the biggest issue is people don't understand the terminology that comes to play with high water mark. I did a little bit of research, and I just wanted to basically put this in layman's terms. Every citizen has a right to walk on state-owned land. The property that is landward of the rack line or mean high water mark is private property. And land that is seaward of that rack line is state-owned. So what is the rack line? The rack line is part of the shore just above the mean high tide line where kelp is, or seaweed, or deposited on the sand. This area is identified by the piles of kelp and other debris, driftwood, things of that nature. Is that answering your question so far? And it's often located at the slight shelf above the moist sand that slopes down towards the water. Everybody knows, generally speaking, what that line is. So if someone tries to tell you that you can't walk on state-owned property, or land that is seaward of the rack line, then notify the Bay Constable, just like what John said. We can't enforce. It's not our job to enforce. Our job is to try to educate the community. And I apologize for not answering the question initially.
Mr. Fung.
Question's been reasonably well answered already, but I don't get the idea of use of the beach. I'm not sure that's entirely a trustee issue. Again, that's an enforcement issue, and it's a non-board issue. Doesn't seem like there is that much of a problem. There are a few highly publicized problems, and there are some slobs who do mess up the beach, and there are some property owners who just don't get it and don't want anybody around. I know in doing the piping culvert enclosures, there were lots of people who were great with it, and there were some people who just said, don't even come near here. And ultimately, we just have to be a little bit more of a community. And the few people who are involved should just step down and stop fighting. As far as the rack line goes, that changes all the time. Beaches change their size. Sand is moving all over the place for various and sundry reasons. Next storm we'll have a whole new section of beaches. We've even got global warming and sea rise, which is an inch every 10 years, but that affects it too. So I'm not sure that we can do anything. I'm not sure what we can do with the rack line. If anybody with some serious expert, we certainly can't monument it.
All right, that's Tom. I'm going to switch the order again here, and we'll start with Mr. Domino. And this is actually a question from the audience. What are the trustees doing about mile-a-minute fine taking over wetlands? Sorry, to repeat, it's an audience question. What are the trustees doing about mile-a-minute fine taking over wetlands? If anything.
As it's determined to be an invasive species, it can be removed from even the areas that are designated as non-disturbance zones. We try to eliminate certain species like that, which are very aggressive. So we haven't seen it. We've been keeping an eye out for it. We all know what it looks like. But we haven't seen it yet in one of our inspections. But again, if we did, we would advocate for its removal.
I concur with Mike. I just wanted to explain, when you see me getting a little bit emotional, it's because I love the North Fork, and I'm really worried about ideas that are thrown around that are going to cost us money. If it's something that's going to protect us, then I focus on that. But I'm really worried about grandiose ideas about surveys and things of that nature because they cost money. And what is the end result? In the military, I've learned two things. You have a decision you have to make. You have to look at the second, third, and fourth order of effects of that decision. And that's exactly what I want to do when we think about surveying land. The second order of effects is hiring somebody. The third order of effect is paying for it. The fourth order of effect is my tax rates go up. And if the fifth order of effect is not helping us in any way, then I want to back away from that and not make that our decision.
So let me answer the question directly, since the person on my left doesn't seem capable of answering the questions. This is about the mile-a-minute vine. It's an invasive species. It is spread through the generation of a very prolific seed base. And the fact that these two gentlemen on my left say they haven't seen any incidents of it tells me that they haven't been looking. If you go to Autumn Lake, you will see the sides of the perimeter of Autumn Lake covered in mile-a-minute vine. And it is only a matter of time before those berries get carried down into Goldsmith's Inlet. One of the ways to control that is a related issue, which the board will be talking in the next hour about, which is the deer. Those seeds are spread by birds and they're spread by deer. And when they get into the runoff that is going down into the next wetland, that's how it spreads. So at minimum, any invasive species is an extremely difficult thing to control. Nevertheless, you can control the seeds from being carried down and spreading further into a neighboring wetland. In addition, they should reach out to other states that have a similar problem, because we're not the only state that has a mile-a-minute problem.
Thank you. The invasive species issue, the mile-a-minute plant, overlaps into the deer management issue. About 3 weeks ago, we had a deer management discussion with the Conic representative, over 300 of us there. One of the things they talked about was because the deer are destroying a lot of vegetation, destroying a lot of environments, it creates another environment for the invasive species to move in and take over. So these two issues are overlapped. This is not just my opinion, these are the biologists talking 3 weeks ago at the Conic Rec Center. So this is one environmental problem that's directly tied to another. We have deer out of control, destroying vegetation, destroying environments, creating erosion problems, in effect creating new habitats, new host areas for invasive species to run wild.
Again, I'm not sure if an invasive species, the mile-a-minute vine, is really a trustee issue since it's on the beach. But, it is a problem, and we've got it. It's not the only problem with invasive species. Last Friday I was at a Northport Audubon meeting where we were talking about that, and the problems with invasive species here are really enormous. Half the stuff, looks like half the stuff we've got doesn't belong here. It wasn't here originally. Now, yeah, it's going to cost money, but do we want stuff like kudzu and mile-a-minute
as I look out to everyone here, you're all very interested Southolders. I'm sure many of you have employed proper land use practices and best practices in your own backyards, and I think we probably all share a lot of that in common. Simple fact is, invasives such as the mile and minute vine create a very special problem for the trustees, because out there, beyond us, are some bad customers that will use every opportunity to clear or damage wetlands and use as an excuse, oh, I was just taking a little mile a minute vine out. Now, with respect to some of other possible candidates here, I must tell you, I have encountered mile a minute vine extensively in my own garden. I've removed it. It's extremely noxious. And I've also watched how it's tracking around our wetlands. And observationally, it tends to like the freshwater wetlands, and it actually gobbles up Phragmites, which is rather interesting. But it tends to not habituate the tidal and saltwater wetlands, where we've been spending a huge amount of our time post-Superstorm Sandy. So I can understand why we haven't seen it on field inspection, and Autumn Lake, which is predominantly very light brackish and sweet water, would be the perfect habitat. That's where it's seen. We just haven't had any jobs on Autumn Lake lately for construction. It's a serious problem. I think this will be an issue that concerned trustees can bring to the town board, so that we can try to create a sanctuary within the wetland code, if you will, a place where we can provide for reasonable controls on noxious and invasive vegetation, but not put our code at risk for the bad customers. Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a question we had emailed in advance today. We'll start with you, Mr. Wells, give you a chance to answer first. What letter grade would you assign to the performance of this current Board of Trustees?
I'm sorry, what?
What letter grade would you assign to the performance of the current Board of Trustees?
A being best, I would give the trustees
8F, standard. Yeah.
I would give the trustees a B, in the sense that they process a lot of code. They uphold the town code. They work very hard, and for that they should be commended. However, the reason they get a B and not an A is because they don't reach out to the community. I believe the trustees' responsibility is to help the public understand how to protect the shoreline and to partner with the community. Outreach is a very important part, I believe, of the trustees' responsibility, because unless you can partner with the community, they're not going to cooperate necessarily willingly with what you need to do to get things done and to protect our shoreline.
Mr. Sanders?